At the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Rory Smith in the GB newsroom. A man who died after being attacked by a dog in Lee in Greater Manchester has been named as Jonathan Hogg. The 37-year-old was found with serious injuries yesterday evening. He was taken to hospital but died in the early hours of this morning. A 24-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of being in charge of a dangerously out-of-control dog. The brother of TV star Philip Schofield has been jailed for 12 years for child sex offences. Timothy Schofield, who was a civilian police worker, committed 11 offences between 2016 and 2019. The boy, who was abused by the 54-year-old, was praised for his remarkable bravery in coming forward. Boris Johnson's wife, Carrie, is pregnant with the couple's third child. She announced on Instagram that they're expecting a sibling for Wilf and Romy in just a few weeks' time. Carrie said she's been feeling pretty exhausted for much of the last 8 months, but they are looking forward to welcoming the newest member of the family very soon. A man who conned victims out of more than £100 million has been jailed. TJ Fletcher founded the website iSpook, which allowed criminals to make phone calls to victims, pretending they were from trusted companies. It was brought down last year in the UK's biggest fraud sting. Well, the 35-year-old's been sentenced to 13 years and 4 months in prison. Detective Superintendent Helen Rance says he clearly didn't care about the harm he was causing.
Before it was shut down, iSpook was constantly growing, with 700 new users registering every week, and it was earning £80,000 per week. Fletcher was leading an extravagant lifestyle, benefiting from the profits, having no care for the misery he was responsible for.
Figures obtained by Labour suggest there's been a big jump in the number of people dying in A&E. Data provided by the NHS trusts under a Freedom of Information request show that more than 23,000 people died in emergency departments last year. That's 22% more than in 2021. Well, the government says it's delivering a record number of tests, speeding up discharges and cutting waiting lists. The former US President Barack Obama is among 500 Americans who've been banned from Russia in tit-for-tat sanctions. Well, it comes after leaders met at the G7 summit in Japan. They announced a wave of fresh punishments over the war in Ukraine. The US is targeting future energy revenues and military supply chains, while Britain is banning imports of Russian diamonds, copper, aluminium and nickel. TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now, time for headliners.
Hello everyone, welcome to Headliners. I'm Leo Kearse and tonight I'm joined by the Harlem hitman Lewis Schaefer and the Guildford grappler Diane Spencer. How are you both doing?
I'm miserable.
Why are you miserable?
I'm not prepared for tonight's show.
Do you know, you have been very glum in the office all evening.
I've been glum, and I've got free-floating anxiety, and I think I've been judged by.
Are you sure you're not a 14-year-old British teenager, Lewis? Anyway, let's have a quick look through Saturday's front pages before Lewis depresses us even further. The Daily Mail with energy bills set to fall £450 as cap is slashed. Does that cheer you up, Lewis?
You know what? I don't come from...
That's, yeah. The Telegraph has UK talking itself into economic decline. The Times has AI is clear and present danger to education. The Express has energy bills set to tumble. The Mirror has give up your 6 secrets, Rose. That's Rose West they're talking about. And finally, the Daily Star leads with Rishi down to his last £529 million. And those were your front pages. And let's have a closer look at those front pages. Lewis, what are the Daily Mail leading with?
Well, they're leading with energy bills to fall £450 as cap is slashed. And and I don't really understand what this cap is, who's paying the cap, where the cap comes from. It's one more business of the government being involved in everything that we do.
Well, it's an energy, it's a price subsidy. So when energy prices go up too high, the government steps in and subsidises people's energy bills. But luckily, the price of energy is dropping thanks to two things: Putin's failing war. So we managed to get an energy war on us, but we managed to find alternative sources that weren't Russia, and also climate change. Climate change has made us warmer, so we don't need as much gas.
No, I'm not going to let you say that climate change is a wonderful thing. It's really not. But what is good is that, as you said, Putin now, he's lost that kind of pushback against the West, because I do feel, and I'm sure a lot of other people do, that he decided to make his further invasion into Ukraine, the one that he started in 2014, because he knew about the West's reliance on Russian gas.
Yeah.
And this is absolutely wonderful, because obviously cost of living crisis, and to sort of get back that £450. It's nice to have a little bit of good news on a front page, actually.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
We were projected to. The energy price cap was going to cost the government something insane, like £28 billion, which is just a crazy amount of money.
Which is
and
crazy.
It ended up costing much less.
Which is crazy, because it basically stokes inflation.
Yeah.
And where's the money coming from? But you said something very interesting, which is Putin's war against, gas war. But the truth was, it wasn't Putin who blew up the
Nord Stream pipeline.
The Nord Stream pipeline. America probably did. So
I like how you said probably, just for Ofcom. You're just going to pouch that conspiracy theory. I know it could. I mean, it could.
I wasn't
we
thinking
don't
it was
know.
for Ofcom. I was just thinking wanted to support my own country.
Just in case you go back there on holiday.
And I've got to be nice to those people.
Anyway, moving on. What's in the front cover of the Telegraph, Diane?
Well, we've got two interesting headlines. We've got the UK talking itself into economic decline. That's basically Jeremy Hunt saying, hey, everybody, cheer up a bit, because he's worried that it's going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy, that if we all walk around going, oh, it's terrible in the UK, nobody's investing, then somehow people will sort of latch onto that as the truth, and then we will end up sort of shrinking our own economy. There is also, though, a very worrying article. Childline website promotes trans treatment. Now, there is a very popular helpline called Childline, which I think that most people have heard of. But unfortunately, they've discovered that teenagers ringing up Childline sort of saying, oh, sometimes I don't like my body. I feel like I'm a girl, but I feel like my breasts are getting in the way because I'm awkward, because, they're going through puberty. They're being told to seek out treatment for transitioning, but obviously this is a helpline, so their parents aren't being involved. And this is quite a big worry. They're sort of telling some people that they should bind their breasts and things like that, which is medically very unsafe. So the Charity Commission are thinking of looking into this, which I think they should.
And staff have come forward saying they're under pressure to give advice, and also they've got forums where children can discuss things. And some of the advice given, Lewis, was a reply from a fellow 14-year-old trans guy, self-described there, said, you could look into starting hormone blockers without your mum's knowledge, as advice to, a young teenager who's got,
seek out drugs.
Who's a bit, mixed up about their gender or whatever, as I should imagine every single teenager is right now. I mean, I know I am.
But isn't this a free speech issue? Because a lot of this is not just what Childline is telling these kids, it's what these kids are telling each other on the site. So shouldn't they be allowed to tell
but when it comes
other?
to medical harm, you can't allow things like advice, and we've certainly seen advice around eating disorders, advice around suicide, that's clamped down on. Childline was set up to help children. If it's spreading advice that is actually harming children through the medication of them when it's unnecessary, through railroading them into surgical pathways.
Yeah, like why start off with such an extreme thing as seek out drugs behind your parents' back? Like, why not start off gently?
I mean, that sounds a bit bad. Seek out drugs behind your parents' back.
That's what they're saying.
That's common sense would tell me.
But that's one 14-year-old to another 14-year-old.
So they haven't changed much since the 90s.
Yeah, no, that's what kids do. They say, that's how to get out of the house.
Yeah, but this is like drugs without the music. That's just awful.
Yeah. That's the trouble with today's teenagers. They don't even know how to take drugs. And finally, what's on the front page of the Daily Star, Diane?
Oh, the Daily Star. Let's get out the world's tiniest violin. Rishi's down to his last 529 million. So he's actually sort of shrunk down a bit in the Times Rich list, which has recently come out. And it's because there's been a drop in his wife's company's value. The one that her father owns, and she's only got like a... Yes, thank you. And she's only got like a 1% stake, but like the 1% means that like she still lost 200 million.
Yeah.
I mean, the numbers are just absolutely mind-boggling. What I find interesting about this article about the Sunday Times Rich List is what's happened to Richard Branson, because obviously he is a very famous British entrepreneur, you know, and he obviously came under fire during COVID when he asked for a bailout for all of his staff. And also Virgin Orbit has recently gone bankrupt, and he has massively dropped on the Rich List. And I do think it's interesting because you can really look at Richard Branson throughout history, and he's always been this kind of crazy maverick entrepreneur. Like, he tried to give us the Hyperloop, he tried to get us into space, but didn't quite make it. So even if you go up with them, you don't quite make it. And it's fascinating to me. Oh, and also Ed Sheeran, Adele and Harry Styles are among the UK's wealthiest people under the age of 35, with all three having wealth higher than £150 million.
Yeah, Ed Sheeran's got £300 million. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Wants to spend that down the barbers.
But, you know, you're acting like this is a bad thing. It's like, why not? Well, maybe not, but why shouldn't Ed Sheeran be totally rich? He makes so many people happy. He doesn't make me happy. I just want to find him one of the most annoying people.
Oh, I didn't think it was a bad
Could
thing.
anything make you happy, Lewis?
And the fact is, if you've got £6 and you lose £2, you might say, well, I've still got £4. But let's say you want a Burger King meal and you can't afford it now. So it can affect people's lives at any price gradient.
That is incredible wisdom, Lewis. And Lewis, what's on the front cover of the Times?
Front cover of the Times is another AI is a clear and present danger, this time to education. And listen, I'm 66 years old. I look amazing. But the truth is, I've been hearing this stuff forever. We've been hearing how this change is going to affect these people, and it's going to put people out of business. There's going to be no work left. And they're saying that there's going to be no education left because AI is going to write kids' papers.
But then if kids can get AI to write their papers from them, isn't that them being skilled for the modern economy, where you're basically going to be operating AI in a lot of knowledge-based jobs?
Don't you dare. That is awful. No. So there is a group that's been created by the head of Epsom College, Sir Anthony Selden, and they're creating a body of head teachers that are going to try to monitor AI and how it infiltrates schools, because it's not just the possibility of cheating that is affecting people, it's also the fact that it might be creating lesson plans and marking kids' work.
Oh, so the teachers are using it. The teachers are cheating.
Using it.
So we're all just going to be sitting in front of a computer for 5 minutes a day, and you know the teachers will get AI to create a lesson plan, and then the children get AI to answer the lesson plan, and then we all go back to playing Call of Duty. That sounds amazing.
And at the end of the day,
this is the danger of infantilizing humans, because we're sort of allowing the AI to do everything for us, and we're losing our ability to create things and critically think.
No, so at some point they're going to have to say to the kids, okay, no computers, write a sentence. And the kids will be forced to write a sentence.
With a pen.
With a pen.
Instead of emojis.
And the teacher will have to grade it. So that's there's no change. I'm sorry for saying it this early in the show, but this is a non-story.
I'm inclined to agree. Anyway, that's the front page is done. Stay tuned for Labour increasing immigration, demands for reparations, and SNP blunders. Sounds like a classic headliners lineup. See you in 2 minutes.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Leo Kearse, joined by Lewis Schaefer and Diane Spencer. Kicking things off in this section with the Mail, and in news that will surprise no one, Labour want to increase the number of Labour voters, Lewis.
Yeah, that's true. Labour admits it could make immigration even higher than 500,000 a year, which is what it's running right now. I mean, how many people can you let in? That's 1% of the country every year. In 10 years, that's 10%. Multiply it, do the math. To plug a skills gap, supposedly British people can't pick strawberries or work at Pret-a-Manger. There's no talent for that. As Richie Sunak slams Keir Starmer for wanting to reopen Brexit. And so this party chairman said that it's not sensible, party chairman of the Labour Party says it's not sensible to say we're going to bring immigration down because we're having there are problems somewhere in the world that we have to take people in. And let me just say this. The only difference between Labour and the Conservatives is Labour admits they're going to let more people in, and the Conservatives say they're not going to let more people in and then let more people in.
I'm amazed that somebody actually found a difference between Labour and the Conservatives. That is well done. Diane, what do you make of this?
Well, obviously, we want to have skilled people in, and it's good that we have a system so that people can sort of bring their talents over to the UK.
But couldn't you train people here?
Yes, we should be able to train people here. And I just think it's interesting. What I'm not happy about is that the party chair, Annalise Dodds, says that she said that they wouldn't have a target. And I think that's silly. I think you still need a target because everything that we have in the UK is run on targets, numbers, queues. You know, we're British. We love queues.
Yeah, without a target, there's nothing to miss.
Yeah, that's a very good point. But, yeah, so I understand it, but I think Lewis is right. Like, at least they're admitting that it may have to get higher before it gets lower. But at the moment, it's all about the rhetoric of stopping the small boats. But we want skilled workers to come in.
Yeah.
No, we don't. We don't need skilled workers. This is one of the most skilled countries in the entire world. You don't need skilled. And number two, before it gets lower, it'll never get lower because the richest people, the 1%, the top, not even the 1%, the top people, they want people to come in. They want people to pick their strawberries.
But this is true. I mean, for business people, it's great. Immigration, open borders is fantastic. You get an unlimited supply of workers who will work at a lower rate than if you had a restricted labour market where people had bargaining power. for the wages. You know, people could.
Oh, that
could
would be
unionise.
terrible if people could actually be paid a decent wage. That would be
no, but
terrible.
I mean, this is no. But Dan, this is what you're saying. You're saying, you know, you want a lot of people coming into the country. That suppresses wages, and it suppresses the bargaining power of workers in the UK.
Right.
And this is why traditionally people on the left have wanted to stay out of the EU and wanted to have secure borders so that, you know, they'd have that bargaining power. I mean, politicians and the elites, you know, the super rich, or not even the super rich, just people who own businesses, tend to see a country as an economy rather than, you know, a set of values and people going through generations. So they think if they bring, you know, 1 million, we've got net migration set to hit 1 million people. If those people come in, it doesn't affect the fabric of communities or anything, or you know, breed resentment or create any issues. They just see it as workers to slot into factories.
Because they are not involved. They're living in their house in Surrey. They're going to private schools. They've got their house. But meanwhile, everybody's houses become expensive, and then everybody's community becomes overbuilt because we got to build more houses for these people. Prices for these houses go up. The rich people in China get richer. Somebody needs to shout about this and speak for the British people. No more immigration, and I'm going home.
Isn't it amazing that we've got an immigrant to do that for us?
Yeah. Somebody needs to recognise what is happening in this country, that both Labour and the Tories are working for the super rich people, not even in this country, but in China and in India, to use this, like you said, brilliant point. This is an economy to them. It's not someone's home.
Yeah.
Fight for Britain.
Anyway, moving on. The Guardian now, and reparations seems to be the word of the year, this time for the abundant energy that has lifted billions of people out of poverty, Diane.
Oh, for goodness sake, you and your views. So the headline is, fossil fuel firms owe climate reparations of $209 billion a year, says study. And this is all about the climate crisis. So there's been a groundbreaking analysis by a non-profit organisation called One Earth. And they've actually been able to sort of put numbers onto how much damage has been done to the Earth. And they've blamed it on 3 sections. And the 3 sections are people, like just us, populations, countries, and the big oil companies, which is very interesting because this is the first time they've managed to put like a monetary amount on the impact that these oil companies have made. And they're saying that because of the £4.3 trillion worth of damage, these companies should consider helping to repair that damage.
But this damage, there's $4.3 trillion of damage because of economic growth, which was facilitated by fossil fuels.
Yeah.
So now, you know, so many people have got yachts that when there's a hurricane, those yachts get damaged, and that's economic damage. It doesn't really mean we're in a worse situation. Also, Lewis, don't you think they're blaming the suppliers instead of the consumers? We all use energy. It's lifted us, it's given us modern life. It's given us the electricity, the electric lights we're sitting under now.
Nobody needs to be blamed for this. The fact is that people are living so much better lives now. They're warm, Diane. You can be in this, you know, they're not shaking. You're sitting here, we're sitting in a beautiful studio, just doing basically bugger all. Can I say bugger all?
Well,
we're doing bugger all because of the fuel. There's been no damage. And I love the way you read it, because they say...
There has been damage. You can't say there's been no damage.
There has been no... Well, no damage to the Earth. Well, let's write a letter to the Earth and say we're sorry. Dear Earth, we're sorry. Where do we post this? Should we maybe go to a volcano and dump it down a volcano? Will you say it's a groundbreaking analysis by One Earth? This is propaganda. This is not even propaganda. It's public relations.
It's made up numbers by a few students.
It's made up.
There is not a few students, and this evidence and the underlying methodology could be used to create a framework to help the biggest historical polluters give money to like some of the smaller communities or any community that they've impacted.
So it's to transfer the wealth. What they want to do is they want to take money from people who have money, and they want to give that money to people who don't deserve it.
It sounds like communism.
Because they feel it sounds like it is communism.
Don't deserve it.
And also, you can't blame the oil companies for giving us the oil. We're the people who burn it. We're the people who are using it. It's like blaming a coca farmer in Bolivia for cocaine gangs in Los Angeles.
That's an excellent point, Diane, and you have no answer for that.
What?
Moving on.
Because we're moving on.
Yeah,
We've got the Telegraph now, and in bad news for Scotland, there's been another SNP blunder that will cost £160 million.
Well, this is
but
all
good news for Scotland. That'll mostly be paid by England, Lewis.
Well, this is a lie. This is basically a lie too. It's the SNP-run council, small school blunder in Renfrewshire could cost. I don't even know where that is.
You said it right. It's okay.
Renfrewshire could cost taxpayers $160 million. It could cost taxpayers $1 million if they spend the amount of money that they need to spend over time.
Yeah, but this story, I mean, they were supposed to build.
They were supposed to build.
They were supposed to build a primary school with capacity for 1,100 pupils. That's what they calculated. And instead they built a primary school with capacity for 430 pupils, which is roughly a third of what they needed.
Yes.
No, they didn't. I don't think they said 1,100.
I don't think they went to the school in the first place to learn to count. Were they doing it with their finger? They ran out of toes?
Basically, they're building 4,000 houses in the middle of nowhere.
Scotland. Right? It's actually called Scotland.
It's Scotland, but it's still in the middle. It's not in the middle of a town where there are already schools. It's in the middle of nowhere where there are no schools, which is why they have to build schools.
That's how towns are created. Have you never played SimCity?
Yeah, I've played SimCity, but you don't need to build towns like that. This new town concept was bad in the 1950s, and it's bad now.
This is horrendous mismanagement by the SNP, which we are used to, because there's still an allegedly luxury camper van full of strange files up in Scotland somewhere, and they're going to charge the taxpayer £160 million. And why are people saying, I remember that number? Because that's how much the Queen's funeral cost to fix this error by the SNP, who, let's face it, have had years of mismanaging money, mismanaging projects, and Humza Yousaf has got a very full to-do list. This is just another error by somebody in his party.
I don't think this is. I think what this is just part of the other story, which is they're building houses everywhere because immigrants are coming in, because they want to dump the money from these countries that have too much money and don't have safe political systems. And it's basically using this green and pleasant land as a bank, as a land storage bank. Horrible, horrible.
OK, well, we've got the Mail now, and the SNP are still sending male sex criminals into women's prisons, Lewis.
I don't know why I get this story, but this is like a comedy program.
Yeah.
Justice has got to be served on this man. New SMP Civil War breaks out over trans child sex abuser. So there's this guy, he did a horrible thing to a girl, a young child.
7-year-old girl, and he kidnapped her for 27 hours. He abused her. He was dressed as a woman at the time.
So so Kate Forbes, who's a Christian, wants this guy sent to a man's prison, and Humza Yousaf, who you just mentioned, who's the head of the SNP and he's the first minister, won't say what they want to do with this guy, but he's saying it might be okay to send him to a woman's prison,
which seems insane.
I have to say this for the sake of the audience: this doesn't mean anyone who transes themselves or anyone any man.
Nobody would suggest it.
They would suggest it, and the fact that it's the reason
it's like saying any man would do it. It's
no.
These are just the situations. This just seems to be happening quite a lot in Scotland.
Yeah, and what is you know what? The same way that they're changing sports categories, so now you can have an open category, which used to be the men's, but now you can sort of compete in that. Why? I mean, maybe do that with prisons, because this person, Andrew Miller, is in the same HMP Edinburgh, which is where the transgender rapist Isla Bryson is. And again, yes, Lewis is completely right. These are two complete outliers, but it's important to acknowledge that they exist.
Yeah,
it's important to acknowledge that. And if there's now sort of two of them, they just have a trans wing.
After a point, surely they stop becoming outliers. You know what I mean?
I suppose so.
But
maybe he was wearing a dress because it gets so cold in Scotland. You got to put extra layers on.
It wasn't a kilt. It was definitely not. Anyway, we've got the Mail now with disturbing evidence that it's not just energy Britain needs to import from other countries, it's nurses, Diane.
Yes, so the NHS's reliance on foreign nurses has reached an unsustainable level, experts warn. So only a third of NHS nurses were trained in the UK, and those numbers have come from sort of 2000 2019. Most of our nurses come from India and the Philippines, but we're also apparently poaching nurses from countries that have been red listed by the World Health Organization, because apparently there's going to be a massive global shortage of nurses in 2030. They're predicting that there's going to be a global shortage of 13 million nurses.
Whoa!
13 million in 2030, and it's mainly going to affect Southeast Asia and Africa. But
is that because they're coming here?
Well, I think that's why we're not allowed to poach them from certain countries.
It's not that they're coming here. It's that the people across the world are getting so unhealthy, and we don't need these nurses. We need the people out there to become healthy. We need them to be slender and beautiful, and I wouldn't say you eat properly, but at least you're slender and beautiful, and slender-ish, maybe you're slender-ish, and then we wouldn't need so many nurses. The 5 million diabetics in this country. That's completely unnecessary. I think anybody.
That's a good point, but we've also got to understand that people being who they are, it doesn't look like they're going to stop eating Twinkies anytime soon.
Well, then we shouldn't have nurses for them. They should go to the hospital. They should bring their own nurses with them. I think there's an unlimited amount of health care that needs to be provided when people do not take care of themselves.
Okay, but in the meantime, we've got a huge shortfall in nurses, and I think we should train up nurses here instead of poaching them from countries that clearly need them as well.
I agree with that.
Anyway, Saturday's Metro now, and Boris is going to be a dad for the 8th time, or 9th, or 10th. He's not actually sure.
Yeah. Well, this just says that even the ugliest guy can have a family and kids, really.
Where's your family?
I've got a family. That's the amazing thing.
Yeah, you do.
I do have a family. I got kids. I've got kids that are embarrassed to know me and my ex-wife. Anyway, Boris Johnson's wife, Carrie, announces she is pregnant with a 3rd child, and this is 3 in 3 years. So Boris has been very active. He's going to die on the saddle because he just looks so horrible, really. He's got type 2 diabetes. If you look at that guy, he's got gout, he's got sleep apnea, he's got a million different problems. He's on metformin, he's on statins. He is a mess.
You'd make an amazing TV doctor, Lewis.
You're
qualified because you have zero medical qualifications.
Well, I am looking at you. You are slender-ish, but there's a little bit that you could deal with down here.
That's my ribs.
Yeah, it's not your ribs.
That's my ribs.
I don't believe that.
Diane, that is my ribs.
I don't believe that. It's being pushed out by your kidneys, the liver, fatty liver disease you have.
It's not fatty. You can feel it's bone.
But would you just announce that I'm not a doctor? Because I don't want these people to think that I'm giving medical advice.
He's not a doctor, but he'd love to hear from you. Diane?
Yeah? Well, what? I mean, Carrie's pregnant again. Well done, dear. I saw that picture that they released where they're all walking, and it's very cute. That little boy definitely has his father's hair, doesn't he?
I guess it's easy for a young child to have that hair.
Yeah. I
think it's beautiful, and good luck to all of them. It's great to see some happiness and some family. Anyway, we're at the halfway point now. Join us after this breather for cancel culture, catching up with Monty Python and the latest twist in the story about the pregnant nurse who was accused of stealing a bike from 2 black men. You won't want to miss it.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. When Monty Python's Life of Brian was released, religious conservatives tried to ban it and lefty liberals fought to have it shown in theatres. How things have changed, Diane.
Yes, well, John Cleese told by Life of Brian stage show actors to scrap joke about man having a baby. So the Monty Python star is working on a stage production, as you said, of the 1979 film, the epic comedy Life of Brian. Now, let's bear in mind, all these actors have been paid, they've got this job, and they're sat in the room reading the script, and they've turned around, and there is a scene where a character named Stan explains that he wants to be called Loretta and have babies.
It's a classic scene.
And then, weirdly enough, he's told by Cleese's character, Reg, this is impossible, right? Can't think why. Oh, yes, he doesn't have a womb. And the actors, who, again, could just go do something else, have said you can't do that stuff nowadays. And they're trying to change the script and the film. I mean, obviously, you have to make some adaptations when you go from, like, film to theatre to make it work. But as an actor, you're always very lucky and very grateful to get any job because you have at least, 100 people fighting for every single spot. I'm sorry, if these people don't want to do it, then go, because there will be actors who do want to do this.
Oh, Diane,
and want to be part
Diane.
Of the... What?
That's
what?
not the issue.
Lois, what?
I don't sound like that. No, that's not the issue with this story. The issue with the story is that people think it's not woke enough, but that's not the issue. Because I side with these guys who don't want to do this.
You side with them?
I side with them.
Well, I think they should get a different job.
No, can I tell you why I side with them? Because when that skit, and I am a huge John Cleese fan, huge Monty Python fan, I know that skit, it is hysterical. When it first came out, it was so funny because it was impossible that something like this would happen. You couldn't imagine this discussion. But then it became an exaggeration. Okay, an exaggeration. Then it became, oh my God, it's totally normal. And that's what this...
Pretty soon it's going to be mandatory.
Mandatory. So now it's just plain boring, okay? When you see people talking like this, the people...
So if it's boring, why can't you include it?
Because it's not funny anymore.
And why are people so fragile? Why can't we have something mocking, that sort of, I guess they'd call it dysphoria now?
You can, but the point is...
Well, no, you just said you can't, and...
No, I say you can't from a comedic point of view. It was once hysterical, once the most funny thing in the world, because it was impossible or an exaggeration. And now it's like there's nothing unusual about it. Of course,
you're right, there is nothing unusual about it, but... I mean, if you're adapting this and it's one of the crucial scenes, shouldn't it be included and then the audience can choose whether they go to see it or not? Why on earth does a group of actors
Oh, you're back to the
Absolutely.
going on.
No, I completely agree with Diane. We've settled that. Anyway, a pregnant nurse. Moving on, a pregnant nurse was fired after being accused of stealing a hire bike from a black man. But there's a twist that nobody saw coming, Lewis.
Well, here's the twist. The twist is you can't even understand. The twist is basically some woman a pregnant New York City nurse accused of taking a city bike, which is like a Boris bike in this country, from a black man outside a hospital, is named, and I guess that she has a GoFundMe page to pay her legal bills, and a lawyer provides receipts.
Well, for a bit of context, she was so somebody videoed this. It showed her arguing with the guy, remonstrating with him. They were both trying to take the same bike. And she's pregnant, she's crying, and Twitter decided that this was an evil white woman using her tears, her fake tears, to get this man into trouble. So she's being racist.
No, I don't think she was doing that.
No, that's exactly what Twitter was saying.
What Twitter was saying.
That's what Twitter was saying. But then the woman's provided receipts that show that, in fact, she had paid for the bike, so she wasn't stealing it from the man.
But it might have lapsed, because if you don't pick the bike up within 5 minutes or something, then the bike becomes available.
She stood next to the bike for 5 minutes.
And that's when the other black guy claimed it was his. What I was shocked at this story, because basically people were so well behaved relatively, okay? There was no violence. It wasn't what you thought there would be. It would be like some kind of violence. What was bad about the thing was that people took... I'm editing what I'm saying. It's up to you, Diane.
I think this is a non-story.
No, this is not a non-story.
This is not.
Honestly, have you heard of this story?
No.
This is insane.
This is not.
What I'm saying is,
everybody jumped on this woman and said, "You're racist." She got fired from her job. She had a bike stolen from her, and she got fired from her job for having a bike stolen from her.
She didn't have her bike stolen from her.
She did.
Sorry,
She's provided the receipts.
She
was
her
bike. I saw the video. You go on. Sorry.
Yeah, it was just because you paused. I thought I'd be silly, but I didn't realise it would trigger Leo. So this is unfair because she's been judged in the media court, and this is what happens a lot these days.
And at her work, she got
but because of the social media judgment, because it was captured on social media, and they have accused her of being a Karen, which is a trope. Now it's a name that's inflicted on a white woman, even when she's standing up for herself, because she truly believes that she has access to the bike. And yes, it's great that she has got receipts, but she has lost her income, and she's pregnant.
Surely her work is going to have to give her job back now that it shows that it was her bike and she'd paid for it.
No, it shows that there was a misunderstanding.
Like there again, would you want to work somewhere like that again that had so callously thrown your way?
That is every single employer in 2023. If they see a social media storm and it looks like somebody says the word racist, your employer is going to fire you. You're going to be dropped. You're going to be persona non grata.
And she was judged in the court of social apps and social media, not judged correctly. And it's really worrying, because you think, well, if there's a snowball effect on social media, this could happen to anyone. Which is why it is an important story. I was just being silly.
Well, do you know what? There is another element in that. All she had to do was say, "Oh, I thought this was my bike. Is this your bike?" And he goes, "Yes, this is my bike."
But it was her bike. And if he took the bike, she's paid for it. She's liable for $1,000.
All she needs to do is then call up the company or call up the police, and then she's clear.
It's not that easy being pregnant.
Exactly. I saw this, and I thought to myself, this poor woman, she's been working 12 hours at a hospital being a nurse.
She's 6 months
in New
pregnant.
York, and she's 6 months pregnant. And then she comes out of the hospital, and she gets
so
a
you saw
misunderstanding.
that, but you didn't think to actually explain it when I came to you. Anyway, the Independent
you didn't give me a chance. You talk right over me.
The Independent now, and gravity might finish the job that Al-Qaeda started, Diane.
So the weight of 1 million buildings may be causing New York to sink, study warns. So you think of New York, and obviously it's got all these incredible, beautiful skyscrapers. But unfortunately, due to subsidence, some areas of New York are actually sinking to between 1 and 2 millimetres a year. Now, obviously, you have 8.8 million people live there, and obviously with the rising sea levels, you've got this kind of double whammy effect where New York could see the effect of rising sea levels from global warming impact them as their city sinks. It's quite incredible.
Isn't it built on rock? I mean, rock doesn't sink.
Yeah, but
I mean,
the
it does
problem
if there's nothing underneath it.
Well, there's three main issues with this. It's to do with groundwater withdrawal, natural ground compaction, tectonic effects. So obviously the plates of the Earth moving,
Yeah, sounds
and
like made
the weight of Harry and Meghan's ego.
This is a made-up story. This is a made-up story.
And that's our New York expert, Lewis.
I'm going to tell you, it's a made-up story. Number one is the big buildings are built on rock, number one. Number two is it's almost impossible to tell whether something is sinking or the water is falling or the water is rising. They can't tell. They can't tell. How do you, the whole thing, the whole world, and you know what? The Northern Hemisphere is sinking automatically from the last ice age. And number two is like I was going to say, you can't tell. You can't tell what's sinking and what isn't sinking.
Yeah, and also it's New York. I'm not that. If New York drowns, I mean.
Well, you're a Trump fan. You should be bothered because his attitude towards climate change is meaning that his own home city is sinking and maybe affected by it.
Trump Tower's got 180 floors. That's you know.
Let's
if we lose 2 floors, we've still got loads anyway.
And it's a millimeter a year.
Oh wow!
Which it takes 25 years to be 1 inch. Of subsidence. So let's be realistic.
Basic maths. Anyway, the Mail now, and the UK has some of the lowest belief levels in the world. I find that hard to believe, Lewis.
I do find it hard to believe. It says the UK has some of the lowest belief levels in the world, according to the Daily Mail. And what they're asking is their belief in God, which is.
Well, it's interesting because. Sorry.
Diane?
Well, I was going to say it shows a disintegration of organised religion because people are saying that they believe less in God. But what's interesting is that despite the general drift away, they're still saying that 46% of them still believe in an afterlife. So I would say that people are still spiritual, but they're not necessarily going towards the tradition sort of monotheistic religions that we're all used to. I'm sorry for interjecting, Lewis.
I'm sorry for acting like I was upset at that. I thought that was quite funny and interesting. I think people are watching this, they're probably thinking there's some kind of sexual hostility between the two of us.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are.
Anyway,
can I just say...
Put that on tape for HR, yep.
Can I just... Sorry about that. Yeah, that was a joke. It was a joke. But I believe...
Lewis is going to move on to be boss of the CBI.
Here's the thing, is that people do believe in other things, though.
Yeah, they do.
Like the food pyramid, like they believe in climate change, like you believe. That's a religion.
Social justice is a new religion. Wokeism is a new religion. It's based on bizarre ideologies, except they change all the time.
They believe in plant-based diets.
Anyway, we've got our final little breather, then we'll be back with alpacas, vegan cheese, and why British women like Danishes. See you in a couple of minutes.
There you go.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the final part of Headliners, kicking things off with the Mail, and British women just don't want to have British kids. Can you blame them, Lewis?
No, I can't blame them, but then again, I know British women, and they're not worth having... I shouldn't say that, because I've got British children. Anyway, British women are increasingly turning to Danish sperm banks. There's not, it basically... This is one of those stories where it basically tells you what actually goes on to create...
And it tells you what goes on in women's minds.
They
want a tall Viking man.
Yeah, they do. At the end of the day, that's what women seem to care for. Is we go through life thinking they're going to like me if I'm funny. They're going to like me if I'm intelligent, if I'm a nice person.
No, they like you if you're Danish.
No, they want a Danish man. But I mean, isn't like 2/3 or half the country made up of Danish people? Don't they have Danish blood?
We do have a lot of Danish DNA in our system because they came over. They did a lot of the Me Too stuff. Back in the day, the Vikings, when they landed. And there wasn't Twitter then. We couldn't make a hashtag to stop it.
I mean, I can't help feeling a little strange talking about this when I clearly do have red hair. So there is there's a possibility that I'm sort of like the original kind of enactment of this.
Have you had a DNA test?
No, I'm not interested in that. So in 2020, over half of all donated sperm actually came from overseas. Isn't that fun? Yeah. First nurses, now sperm. Yeah. And in Denmark, the sperm banks are booming business, and they say that some students... A little bit of a worry that they kind of pick that it's students mainly doing this.
Well, they're doing it anyway.
Well, OK, can earn £400 a month. And I'm assuming that 50 quid of that is spent on electrolyte drinks. But it's quite an interesting article in the Daily Mail. And it does talk about identification as well. Because apparently in the UK, you can be a sperm donor and you can keep your identity anonymous. Whereas in Denmark, it's much more likely that people are... they will let
track them down.
Yeah, you can track them down.
So you can get the child support. So maybe that's why. Maybe it's not just that Danish men are much better looking than us. Anyway, the Metro now, and there are calls for a cheese rolling festival to go vegan. How are they going to get the strength to climb to the top of the hill, Diane?
They shouldn't. This is awful. So it's in the Metro. Historic cheese rolling festival asked to use the vegan kind instead. Now, I'm sorry, Peter, but I am from the southwest. We have a proud tradition of making cheese. I have worked at Ilchester Cheese Factory. Yes, I have. There's even a cheese cam where you can watch the cheese at Wookey Hole. I am not joking. You can see the cheese sat in the caves. And Peter have written to the Cooper's Hill cheese roll in Gloucester. People travel from all over the world to do this, where you get a big thing of cheese and you roll it down the hill.
Massive heels.
Yes, they're huge. And they've said, hey, guys, we think you should be using, why don't you use an alternative? They've written this, admittedly...
Vegan cheese, because, it doesn't melt on pizza, so, is there a danger it doesn't roll the same way, Lewis?
Oh, yes.
I think that's possible. I think this is one of those stories. I think it's maybe it's PETA trying to be funny. You know, I know we can't imagine vegans being that funny, but they're being funny because they know that Cooper's cheese Rose is not going to do it. But the thing about this is that what do you know when this it's going to happen on Monday, which is the 22nd of May.
How do you keep tabs on dates, Lewis?
Of May, and how do you keep tabs of the dates? You get Lewis Schaefer's calendar.
Do you want to hold up the front of it so people can see the front?
No, I'm going to find out because it's in May.
No, we don't have time.
It's in May, and this is Lewis Schaefer's calendar for May, and it's available. There's only 3 more days left, and then we're not.
You've got some random picture.
I've got a random picture because it's not a random. It's me playing cards with some old ladies. With some old ladies. Okay. You're supposed to cut me off and say that's too much, Lewis.
But I know. I wanted to see where you're going with that. Anyway, moving on. We've got the Telegraph now, and a bougie attempt to relieve stress at Oxford has backfired, Lewis.
Yeah, this is this is Oxford University. The more you know about those universities, the less you respect them. Really,
that's the truth.
It is the truth, and you meet people from Oxford, and you hear about what's going up there in Oxford and Cambridge. And Harvard in America, it's not just here. They're all such idiots because they practice what they practice. They practice. Okay, that's what we're up to. Well-being alpacas at Oxford University cause revising students' stress. And there seems to be some kind of tradition. That's what they do. They have a million traditions.
Is it a tradition?
Yes, it said of bringing in alpacas and bringing them outside the libraries, this Radcliffe Camera Library. I don't know if they've got cameras in there. And it's a university landmark built in the 18th century. That's the 1700s. And people come and they meet.
But people are getting stressed out from these supposed stress-relieving animals.
They're inside studying, and outside there are cute alpacas.
They're doing exams.
Yeah, and outside you have people queuing up to meet the alpacas.
Making a lot of noise, I imagine. They're alpacas.
I see.
Yeah, and so obviously for the students who are actually taking exams, it's very off-putting to have all these people outside. And alpacas do make noise.
And just we've got literally 10 seconds. So just tell us, because there's a rivalry between Oxford and Cambridge. How are they relieving stress?
Cambridge University offers Lego building sessions to students stressed about upcoming exams, and they've offered lots of fun things to do, like colouring books.
Fantastic. Anyway, the show is nearly over, so let's take another quick look at Saturday's front pages. The Daily Mail has energy bills to fall £450 as cap is slashed. The Telegraph leads with UK talking itself into economic decline. The Times has AI is clear and present danger to education. The Express has energy bills to tumble. The Mirror leads with give up your six secrets, Rose. And finally, the Daily Star has Rishi down to his last £529 million. That's all we have time for. My thanks to Lewis and Diane. I'm back tomorrow at 11 p.m. with some other people. If you're watching at 5 p.m, stay tuned for breakfast.
You did a great job, Leo.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.